Welcome back, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer1745 with my continuing playthrough of Strategic Command World War I, and this is the West Front first, but I also have special guest, Ari, who's a big fan of things World War I, and he's going to be helping me out with color commentary during this episode. Say hi, Ari.
I'll try my best. Hello.
Hello. Yes, so hopefully we can have interesting discussions. It's meant to be a little more information, but also to diversify things than just me talking about everything. Okay. So we can see here that we have done better than historical. We're not quite on the outskirts of Paris, but nearly so. But this unit here got battered last turn. So what we need to do is take this unit here, shift, come over, and swap them out. That way, this unit now can be fully reinforced, and they're in an entrenched hex. These guys are not an entrenched hex, so they're going to get one. So they've entrenched now. This looks like where we're going to try to kill this core here. We have just one shell. Well, oh, damn. We should have attacked with the bombers first. Even with that interceptors, with our escorts, that would have helped a bit. Now the question is would one more attack be useful? Not really, so we're just going to reinforce that. Okay, that didn't work out so well, but down here I think we'll have better luck. They have, well, level 1 and we have level 0 Germans. And they fell back, damn. That means they get saved. Wish I didn't use that unit because I could have used it here. This unit. Well, the French did fairly well this turn. Okay, here's a question for you, Ari, and you can maybe, I don't know, you don't know this is just interesting me. Why do they call it the Adrian helmet? Do you know?
I don't know much about the equipment names, but if I was to presume...
Well, I don't know if is it named after like a person who designed it, or I just don't know. I just thought maybe you did. Because it becomes almost the universal helmet.
This war was definitely a development marvel when it comes to... In times of war, technology does get a huge boost.
Oh, absolutely.
Or if I was to agree with anyone when it comes to World War I, and about the only general of the Allied side that I know even a little bit about, quotes-wise, would have to be Ferdinand Foch. Obviously, the quote I'm referring to is that airplanes are interesting toys.
Interesting toys.
Not to dismay that aircraft are very important in modern warfare now, and in World War II they were astonishingly helpful in battle. But in World War One, they were still pretty underdeveloped. They were more of a sportsmanship sort of design. Pilots sort of jousted each other in the skies. It was more of a morale thing, and recon obviously was important.
Yeah, that's true.
However, it did fairly little damage compared to the infantry when it came to ground combat. And the Zeppelin raids of London did nothing but strengthen the resolve of many Britishmen.
Yep. Okay, let's see if we can take out Triana here.
What's interesting about that is that's a peaceful occupation of Albania. In case you didn't know that, as a little tidbit.
Was it a peaceful occupation?
Well, you know, they had Serbian soldiers going into retreat to Albania, so Austria-Hungary just decided to peacefully occupy them, in a sense. I don't know the level of resistance that was applied to them, or how much they fought back, but they were in fact under the Austrian boot rather quickly after Serbia's fall.
I am worried about Serb partisans.
One thing you've been doing well on both of your series is taking out Serbia without Bulgaria's help, which obviously didn't really happen in World War I.
Yeah. Now I have, of course, historical hindsight, and I knew that Bulgaria was going to be fairly tough, so I decided to hit it hard early on. So the way I strategically look at some things, when you have a shall we say, I wanted to zoom out about here, sort of a limitless, I mean, obviously there's a limit, but limitless ability to like advance into Russia, this could be an unending war. But where you have limited objectives, limited abilities to retreat, hammering that out early on secures this flank instead of keeping this flank an always going cancer, as it were. So that is sort of why I push down here so hard so early.
You know what I don't understand is why Greece keeps joining the war so soon.
Yeah, well, I'm sure there's some scripting element. It may not be a hard script, as it were, like they must, but it does seem like it's a sort of a foregone conclusion, because I have to wonder, what are they going to get out of it, joining the war?
Well, the thing that I always take away from this is they always expected a sort of restoration in the ancient Greek Empire, where they own all of the Aegean Sea.
Right.
And for a time when Turkey was obviously undergoing the civil war, that's what Greeks sort of wanted to do, with the help of Italy even. And well, of course, Italy's help was a little limited, but still, they were given monetary aid by the Allies for a brief time. Of course, they soon fell out of favor, and Turkey kicked out the Allied occupation.
Yeah, no, there was a whole Greek, sort of post-World War I Greek attempt at, well, maybe even retaking Constantinople. But they really pushed.
That would have been the pride of possession. That would have been the main thing that they wanted. However, they obviously wanted a bit of Anatolia and the regions where ethnic Greeks have settled.
I would dispute the idea that Greeks have settled
We're not,
because they were there. They were there before the Turks showed up. Because I don't know how much you know about this, but there were probably I'm going to just throw out a number, probably somewhere between 25 and 30% or more of the population of Constantinople at the beginning of World War One was Greek. Some of these significant cities along the coast here were majority Greek.
Yeah, that is obviously what I'm referring to.
Right, and they, in the shift from the Ottoman Empire to the Turkic nation, everybody in Turkey was going to be Greek. No, sorry, everybody in Turkey was going to be Turkish. So people out here were going to be Mountain Turks instead of Kurds. And we do know about the Armenian genocide out here. And so they really, and that happened, I think, mostly when it was still the Ottoman Empire. They were just sort of worried that the Armenians were going to be too favorable to Russia. And so Greece really pushed in the sort of post-World War One time into Turkey, like you say, when Turkey's collapsing and falling apart. There are whole minor cities, shall we say, because I don't want to just make them out of small towns, but whole sort of minor cities that are entirely made up of peoples from particular former, mostly coastal cities from, like you say, Asia Minor here, that are in Greece to this day, that still sort of maintain their exiled identity. And there is a lot of that going on. So this is still a very real and open sore, basically 100 years later. And so it's still very much a thing of today.
Wasn't the most recent war in the 70s?
Yeah, well, you had the Turkish invasion of Cyprus that I'm not an expert on the Turkish invasion, but I can only imagine it was intended to fully take over the island, because just taking half of it just doesn't seem
useful in any way.
Well, yeah, useful, or the point of it, and it's really the population, by the time the British were leaving, had left it as a colonial possession. They still, to this day, have a naval and air base there, and part of it is on this sort of demarcation line between the two regions, and it's in my opinion, the only reason the Turks still have it is because of the Soviet Union and trying to get Turkey into the NATO and being an ally there, that they weren't pushed back out. Because it would be so easy for Britain to go, oh yeah, you don't get to float anything around here, because compared to Turkey, Britain still has a powerful navy that they could keep anybody from floating anything out at the sea and just cut them off, and then let deal with it more locally. But so yeah, they invaded. The Cypriots were able to hold out. The Cypriots were trying to create a Greco-Turkish nation. The actual designer of the current Cypriot flag was a local Turk. But what has happened is probably about half or more of the people that are living in the Turkish zone, that's some sort of pseudo-state that only Turkey recognizes, are colonists that Turkey sent down, and they've forcibly expelled the Greeks in their section of it. So this is a very unsettled question, and I think we're going to see a Turkish collapse coming. I I'm hesitant to talk to some of my few of the people that I know, because I don't know them well, that are, I think, mostly from Constantinople, and because it's always a sensitive subject, plus that things aren't necessarily free speech, even whatnot, might get some people in trouble, whether they would be willing to say what they think. But I think Erdogan is pushing things way too far, way too hard, and like things aren't going so well in Syria for him. It may seem like they're going well, but they're sort of costly, and that can be another. It could be sort of Turkey's Afghanistan, as it were. And so I could see that collapsing, and when that collapses, I think there's going to be a bit of a reckoning over Cyprus, and I think we may see the reverse ethnic cleansing and just go sort of like what we saw after the end of World War I, where all of the Sudeten Germans were expelled from Czechoslovakia. It didn't matter, just everyone, if you're the ethnic Germans, just everybody out. You're going back to Germany. You want to be German, you're going back to Germany. Even though you've been there for, 300, 400 years, because that's the Sudeten, much of the territory had always been ethnic German. It had never been Czech or any other sort of ethnicity as part of the, Austro-Hungarian Empire. The Holy Roman Empire. And so I think they're just not going to make a distinction between the Turks that were there when Cyprus becomes independent from the British and the later colonists. I think we're going to see something like happen in Yugoslavia. So I think that's the future of what's going on. But no, I don't think the Greeks are going to get Constantinople back. Okay. We're trying to move this core up here. We're just sort of walking it instead of spending the money. We have a core and a detachment holding the Dina. Okay, can we? No, can't. Well,
their oil fields.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Let's take the oil fields, and then hopefully they'll be able to come back and not get cut off. Yeah, that can be useful there. I wish we had the rail transport down here, because they're right in that this railways were very fragmented.
Unfortunately, the Berlin-Baghdad Railroad was never really completed.
No, it wasn't.
Even after World War I and World War II, it wasn't even complete.
Yeah, well, that was political, because as we can see here, because I actually read an account in a railway enthusiast magazine that I think was written around 1936, a British one, and somebody talking about taking some of the rail trips around here. This railway here is just sort of like you see it here, in that part of the railway ends up in Turkey, and part of the railway is at the time was sort of French mandate Syria. And so I think this has been connected up inside Syria today, but you were bouncing back and forth across borders back in the 30s. So there has been very little improvement. Okay, we pushed too far. They've counterattacked. Okay. By swapping that out, that means that it sort of kind of acts as if it hadn't been moved, so we can fully reinforce that. And these guys can entrench facing the Russian detachment there. Now that we can see into here, let's take that and let's move and strike there. We might as well, even though we are down at a strength 4, but pushing fairly deep in.
Doesn't hurt to have the bread basket.
No, it doesn't at all. As you can see, we're pushing a little bit beyond our...
So, are you gonna try to keep Cousin Nikki alive in this one?
No, this one, it was, I think, that last episode, but I think basically last turn. We sent Lenin into Russia. It's just because of what happened in that other playthrough, and too much of it is I should have walked a little more slowly. Okay, well, you'll get out there now. And let's push down here. Ah, there's submarines.
I think if Russia would have fallen the way you did it the other series, there would have been a peace in World War One. That was one of the big reasons why Germany was heavily hindered in the Treaty of Versailles, was because of what they did to Russia. And one reason why the Allies didn't want to make peace with Germany to start with was because of what they did to Russia. They feared what would happen to them.
Right. Well, and I know I talked about this last episode, but you weren't part of it, and it hasn't been released yet, obviously, because I made it just less than an hour ago. My thought is sort of at the conditions that I got the game to, I think there should have been a negotiation open with Russia, saying, hey, we'll give you these, sort of, which it was sort of like, a big chunk of Poland, maybe a little bit of Ukraine, maybe a little bit of, Georgia down here to the Turks. And we'll call it quits. Is that good? And then me, as the being more victorious Central Powers player, could say yes or no. And if it's no, well, then you sort of get a fighting on morale boost for Russia, and just make it harder that I really have to push deeper in to get a better result, like much of the Ukraine to at least Western Ukraine to Austro-Hungary, maybe sort of, I don't know how, if any, much of the northern Ukraine and whatnot to Germany, the Baltic states, straight to Germany, and, pretty deep into here, not like Moscow, but somewhere, well, maybe this rail line or something, big chunk of stuff to Germany, where they would still have Petrograd and Moscow and whatnot as sort of a secondary hard push into kind of situation.
And Turkish control of the Black Sea.
Well,
Ottoman, I guess.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I don't know how much... See, he says if you make it, how hard you're going to push, and I don't know. The idea that, I guess, as I'm looking at the map here, probably Rostov and staying Russian, Novorossiysk, and my cop saying, Russian, that part, maybe Crimea. I don't know if Germany and Austria are enough of Turkish friends to want to give that to Turkey. I just don't see that. And I don't see Turkey being able to insist upon it. Now, maybe getting Georgia, sort of the south of the Caucasus, maybe even pushing to Baku, but that kind of thing, maybe that. Because oil was important, but it wasn't quite known how important, I don't think, at the time. Okay.
One thing I sort of didn't like about the other series is that Poland was directly under the German boot. When I think much more realistically, Germany would have created a Polish puppet state.
Well, I don't know if you know, Germany did create historically a Polish puppet state, and so
that's why I didn't like how they had it fully occupied in the other series. They would have created a Polish puppet state, obviously.
Yeah, and I don't, it's a book that, was it Hitler's Empire or something? I forget, one of the ones I've recently read. I don't know, the first 10 or 20% of the book is talking about pre-World War I and World War I era, particularly with Poland, German relations. And they really sort of do a deep dive, setting the framework and context for what happens, and wanting to erase Poland from the map in World War II, and how it wasn't apparently the goal in World War I. But because people have looked at, well, there's this or that, or somebody, and definitely some people that had government positions were talking about expanding the German Empire to the west, expanding the German Empire to the east. Now, these are sort of like the hardliners, and I don't know that Nicky was, Willie was one of those types of people. Now, not that he wouldn't have wanted a bigger empire, but I don't think that was his goal for this war. Now, would it have been a very big Poland? I don't think so. I think it sort of would have been a Warsaw, Brest-Litovsk. What is this?
Oh yeah, Poland would be nothing but just the Russian territories. Germany and Austria would give nothing.
Well, see, I don't even know whether something like Lodz would necessarily. I think they would have carved off some of this land. I think they would have extended East Prussia eastward, and maybe north. Brest-Litovsk might be the sort of northern peak here, and just sort of taken a fair amount of this territory. So I think it would have been a much smaller Poland, and I think it would have been a puppet state, a real sort of puppet state, not just sort of a pretend puppet state. Okay, what are we looking for? Okay, we've got lots of MPP, so let's. Oh, you're okay. Let's move you down to here then.
I do believe around this time, I think Woodrow was trying to make peace between the powers, but obviously that didn't go anywhere. Obviously, I'm referring to January 1916, well, just 1916 in general.
Yeah, I don't know much about Woodrow. Woodrow Wilson definitely wants to get involved with what's going on here in World War I. I'm not. Okay, we're going to move you to the rail line because I think I want you occupying.
The problem with Woodrow Wilson was he saw himself as a Jesus figure.
Yeah, maybe. He definitely. He was a. I would say bordering on an evil person. I mean, he would, in the modern context, he was a very, very strong racist. Let's see, this unit here, do we want to move him via rail forward?
If Theodore didn't split the third party vote and all that, well, split the Republican vote, and well, if Theodore was the Republican nominee in general, I feel like World War I would have been much clearer of a
well, yeah, we'll do this. Let's get these guys all the way over.
Of course, I have my biases with Theodore, but I still feel like he'd be the best president to be involved in World War I.
Yeah, I know you do. I think Okay, I don't particularly dislike Theodore, but he was very much an early progressive. So I don't know that he's the solution, shall we say. Now, compare him versus Woodrow Wilson. Oh God, he's light years ahead of Woodrow Wilson as a generally beneficial person. And Woodrow Wilson wants to remake things. He is a definitely somebody very far along the progressives line. I mean, to the point of being, I would say, a socialist and wanting, he's a racist, he's a socialist. I don't know that he's an out and out communist. He might have been in his heart of hearts. He definitely wants to reshape the world. So you're not wrong in his sort of self-assurance of thinking that he's going to make the best decisions for humanity. That is quite clear in my mind, what Wilson thought of a lot of that stuff. Okay, let's see now.
I feel like using the term progressive as a evil sense for early progressivism isn't truly right, especially for Theodore's case. After all, he was still very much a little bit of a warmonger.
Well, progressives are warmongers. I mean, I would say that's a clear statement. Okay. Progressives, as in used in the very late 19th century and early 20th century, are people that want to achieve very strong social, and when I say socialism, I mean the quote-unquote people through the mechanism of the government to own the means of production, not social welfare. Because with the first nation that sets up a social security type system that I know of any size or scale is Bismarck setting that up for the new German Empire. And Bismarck is not a progressive. He isn't. The Kaiser isn't. They're not progressives. They're not going down that.
Bismarck is very much an absolute monarchist and fought against republicanism.
Well, he's a monarchist. Now, there's a difference between an absolute monarchist and a monarchist. So I don't know, because, like, an absolute monarchist is the type of person that whatever the monarch says, we do. The monarch says we cut off our left foot. Everyone in the nation cuts off their left foot tomorrow because the monarch says so. We all do it because that's what the monarch says. What the monarch's word is the will of God, basically, because he is not just anointed by God, but he is God's ruler, not in things religious, but in things pastoral, if you will, not temporal, not religious, but in God's ruler on earth of humanity. That is Louis XIV. That is truly the divine right of kings, not just to reign, but to rule. And so an absolute monarchist, I doubt Bismarck is. But what he is a monarchist, absolutely, and an anti-republican. You are absolutely right on that, Ari. And so he definitely, because they set up I forget what it's called, if it's called Parliament or whatever. They do set up a legislative branch of the government, for all of the German Empire coming along. And so he's definitely not, somebody that just wants the king's word and what does the king say today, we do. But he is definitely a monarchist. And that is, again, you're very right, not what somebody like Wilson wants. He wants to tear down the old orders. And so that's why I am I hear you when you're sort of trying to talk about Roosevelt and progressivism and not evil, but
I mean, he passed like twice as much legislature as literally every other president, every president combined under him.
You mean Theodore did?
Yeah, Theodore.
Yeah, and here's the thing. You have Theodore trying to break up the monopolies. Okay. That can be done under two viewpoints. One, under sort of the progressive viewpoint of government control, government authority. And it is, in a way, anti-libertarianism. But on the other hand, and if you look at sort of Adam Smith's capitalism, and the reason I'm putting his name in front of it, because when what people, conservatives or most what we call capitalists today refer to capitalism, they mean free market capitalism, where often the socialists, communists, anarchists, and other people, when they say capitalism, they mean anything that isn't socialism. So they could be often and traditionally been somebody with a title that may own a factory or own the land that there's a mine on it, and so or maybe own the land that there's a factory on it, and may even own the factory. So these are individuals owning the means of production, even though there isn't, because a lot of the times in the country or in particular regions, they have a monopoly granted to them. Like they're the only ones that can sell turnips in this county. This guy, he has a monopoly. So when you hear the socialist critique of capitalism, they're sort of throwing all that in there, where those that defend capitalism are often defending it from the free market. And so if you look at Teddy Roosevelt as dealing with the antitrust laws, because that's sort of the trusts were the basically the monopolies. And then because sometimes they form trusts that, divvied up like big chunks of the nation for, well, I'll sell all the steel in this area of, the Northeast, and you sell all the steel in the Southeast. So there's no competition. You just won't sell to somebody in another area outside of yours. So they set up these trusts. Is that they've moved so far that there is no longer a free market. So you're breaking up monopolies to enable the free market. And that is where you often get the left praising Roosevelt, because he's going after capitalism. He is reforming things, not reformation. You like to use that term. You're sort of throwing in the religious connotation into it. But he wants to reform things, and they like that because they see that as heading towards, or as one, accepting government oversight or government power in that realm, and that is just a stepping stone to their, whether revolutionary path to socialism and communism or progressive path to socialism and communism. And that is sort of how, and since Roosevelt himself used the term progressive, and that term was not, and it was sort of mistakenly, people thought to mean progress, and they intended it to be so. Oh, we're just here to try to make progress. Well, their progress is towards socialism, not towards just improvements.
I have to completely disagree when it comes to the dissolution of the monopoly. It wasn't done simply because of a socialist propaganda. There was so much corruption in the government because of these monopolies. They were able to buy seats in Congress buy votes. Small businesses didn't exist because if there was any competition, they could take a debt for a little bit, lowering to ridiculous prices, and just buy the business.
Well, okay. One, I in no way am disagreeing with what you're saying. Okay. But I was looking at it from an ideological point of view, not a practical point of view. Now, what you had the case of, and I don't know, there's corruption in politics to this day. I know the Democrats don't like to admit it, but it's there. And I'm not, and part of that is, and corruption itself is not mean illegality, okay? This is, you and everyone else has to understand. When you accuse a politician or a government person of being corrupt, does not necessarily mean that they've broken any laws. Because just, you're not allowed to be corrupt. Well, what does that mean? So corruption is, can be all kinds of levels of things. It doesn't have to be breaking of laws.
I fully understand that. Not all corruption is necessarily bad corruption. Some people are corrupt for good reasons, but...
Yeah, but what you're talking about is, and also dealing with the time period, I don't know how much in the House of Representatives that the trusts, the big trusts, were buying representatives. Now you can look at Tammany Hall and other sorts of schemes to control legislative seats, and often that's referring to Democratic plans for the Democratic parties that they would control these things, and those were going on, often tied to newspapers. That was going on, but to get more to directly what you're talking about is that it used to be that each state could choose how it elected a senator. They always had two, but how they elected their senators. The state of California had it set up so that I think it was the state senate in itself would elect the senators. So no one in the state of California except for the state senators would get to vote on who the senator was going to be. And this is where you had the I think it was one of the railway companies out here, or the railway company out here, that basically bribed the Senate, or enough of the Senate members, into voting for who they wanted, or shall we say, voting for someone who committed to protecting the railway's interest. Now, they might be able to have other policies outside of what the railway was concerned about with, so that they were definitely doing that. And it was part of the Roosevelt era's reform, was to get rid of that and to say because this was obviously at the time before women had the right to vote, but those that who vote for the United States president in your state are also the same people that vote for the senators. So it was worded something like that. So that basically gets it out to registered voters voting for the senators, and that's changed things. It's a fine line whether I would say that's a positive or negative on the whole, but it definitely deals with that corruption. So when somebody describes themselves as a progressive, and what the progressives, generally speaking, meant when they called themselves that, I can't divorce Teddy Roosevelt from that ultimate goal of some sort of at least hardcore socialism. I don't know if it quite goes in his mind to the extremes of communism, but definitely to the progressive socialism movement. But he just wants to move it step by step as the people are ready. And he is probably, and there is definitely what's called conservative progressivism and just general progressivism or leftist progressivism. They want to push fast. The leftists want to push faster and harder. The conservatives just want to slowly go there. And there's a big strain to this day in the Republican Party of conservative progressives. I would say one of the leaders of that movement today is Lindsey Graham. He is probably one of the biggest. It had been definitely John McCain. He was one of the core Republican progressives in the U.S. Senate. So back to the First World War. Okay. But it all ties into Wilson and wanting to get into the war, and he wanted to use that to reshape things. Yes, we have the resources, so we're going to upgrade that. Now, Turkey. We also have quite a few resources as Turkey, so we're going to, let's get you to a port. Yeah, we can come out to here so that we can upgrade you. Let's move you out of a port so that we can upgrade you next turn. Okay, because we want to get the Turkish Navy somewhat in shape. No, we'll just do 1 point. So that we can maybe escort our landings in like Rhodes or Cyprus. Okay.
Definitely doing a lot more naval invasions this time.
Yeah, I'm looking at doing some of that. I'm pretending we're British. So we've done up here to outflank the Russians. We're blockading this port with all of these ships, so they're cut off via land here, so that city's cut off. Yeah, they're in a fort, but let's see if we can reduce their morale. Okay, it hurt us just a little bit. Okay, no real damage either side. Let's entrench. There we go. Okay, now we also sort of have... Okay, well, there's another submarine floating somewhere around here, so... Don't know if they're in this port or down here, so we need to be a little careful about moving... See if we can sink this. Nope. Well, there it is. Okay. Don't want to move my battle cruiser next to be sunk. Germany, how are we doing for... Okay, well, we'll see if we have enough points to... No, but we will move you this way, you this way. Let's see about... blockading here. Maybe we need another ship for that to do it properly. Because I want to sort of maybe blockade Riga here as well. Okay. How far do I push? Well, this snow isn't going to help much. Okay, they can push to there. These guys can French that way. There we go. They may be able to take that back. Vitesk cut us off, but well, let's just do that. They can maybe retake Smolensk if they wish, but it means at least temporarily was ours, and that'll force them to do something about it, I think, which could be good and better than maybe getting them cut off. Let's see, what's this going to run me? 75, yeah, we'll pay that.
Something interesting that maybe not a lot of people know, as an interesting little tidbit, the Bulgarian national anthem is actually a German song. Well, obviously they changed up the lyrics and the instruments behind it a little bit, but it's still got the same sort of tune behind
it. Okay. Didn't know that.
It's in the same melody as Windai Sultan, or Soldaten.
Okay, Soldaten, yeah. Okay, these are all pushing about as smart as we can. You're coming down to help fight the Greeks. You're coming that way. Well, the Greeks made a mistake by moving those guys up to there.
We're definitely doing a lot better than Germany did in 1916, historically speaking, OCP.
Yeah. So we can move up here. Okay. Partisans are messing with it now. Let's see what we can do here. Okay, submarine. Sink them. Sink them. There we go. You come out to here, you come out to here. Okay, well they can sort of hide there. Here, do we... Okay, oh, here. No, I think we're going to do that.
If I have to say, I think Paris might be our Verdun for this one.
And I don't really quite honestly know how you mean that. I'm not saying you're wrong, I just don't know what you mean by our Verdun.
Well, as you know, historically, Verdun was a horrible battlefield for everyone involved.
Yes, I got that part of it.
And Paris will be our Verdun, because we're going to have a long, bloody fight in order to get it. Plus, I'm just replying to OCB in the chat.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, hi, OCB. Yeah, but I don't know, because I hear you, Ari. I do hear you, but I don't know that I'm going to push very hard for Paris, because...
Well, there's no need to rush things. Time is very important.
Well, I'm a Sun Tzu, the indirect approach, Sun Tzu. Yeah. So I'm always... No, we're not in a multiplayer game. Ari's just helping me record this episode, and we're using Twitch so that he can see what we're doing, and we're sort of talking and making an episode that'll be up later on YouTube. But you can watch now, more than welcome. If you have questions, we'll try to answer them. But so I'm looking at my strategy to get here. Well, I was very much, I saw lots of forces here trying to push around the flank. And so I don't know if I'm going to push hard here as opposed to just keep pushing other flanks, trying to divert them, and then sort of, yeah, there's going to be a battle, there's going to be an assault, but not necessarily a bloody one. We will see. Okay. I think we're now ready for production and research and whatnot.
You could potentially just cut off for done.
Yeah, now on that, okay. You can see it does say secondary supply. So it has it's going to be able to, if we just cut it off, it won't just die because of starvation. So we would have to assault it. And I have done so on some of these forts here that are secondary supplies, and took them. But it's a surrounding, hammering in, getting them. So unlike just isolating another core, it's that will just die because of lack of supplies. Eventually, you don't have to attack. It's not quite that easy. Now, I could use some more units. Now, I think Russia's about ready to collapse in a turn or two. But okay, well, that's just, I just can't afford that. I've stopped any new, and we've used up most of the available units for Austria, Hungary. We've been sending them a lot of the Germany's MPP, so that sort of allowed them to, mentioning that, do we have, yes, some shipping here that we should see about reinforcing. So we're going to get some of these subs. That dreadnought, new big battleship. And do I have a destroyer here? No, I think it got destroyed. So let's get the light cruiser. Okay, so we're upping the naval game here. We'll just +1 to here. Okay, so we're doing well. We're doing, as Ari was saying, much better than historical, but there's still tough things to do. And the big, for me at least, the big concern is always what's going to happen when America shows up. I'll just max that, yeah.
Any plans on landing on the hill?
I'm not getting that bit. What?
Salento.
Oh, the heel, you mean? Oh, Italy. Maybe there's still a fair amount of Italian fleet out here, and so because if I were to move out of port before I get hammered by Italian and French fleet, so at some point, see again, that is my strategy. Is not necessarily to primarily push here. Yes, at some point we will, but to possibly land somewhere in Italy, which will force them to send some of these forces down to there to deal with that, which will weaken these, which means we can push here, which means the French and or the British will have to keep Italy into the war, which will mean send forces there, which will mean either weakening or just not being able to reinforce up here and allowing us to come in. So that is sort of what I mean by not planning a direct hard assault on Paris.
I mean, for Italy especially, you're definitely not going to want to do a direct attack for them because the Alp Mountains are kind of brutal.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, we want to continue to hammer them where it's opportunistic. Okay. Where we have advantages. All right. Let's get back to looking at production for.
Hey guys.
How you doing?
Fine as always. Hope
We are making an episode of Strategic Command World War I right now.
Okay. Sorry for interrupting.
No problem. No problem at all. Okay, so here we have. Do we want another Turkish corps? What do you think, Ari? Or do we improve the ones we have?
Well, the Turkish army in general is a lot worse than the German infantry, so maybe improving the ones you have would be better.
Yeah.
Railroad gun wouldn't be very useful, so there's no real point in getting that either.
Yeah.
You'd be going
production
for
technology. I think we can go for production technology there for 75. Get that. And you were saying mobility. That would be another good one. Yes.
So tank development.
I'm going to stay away from armor and tank for Turkey.
Yeah, not Turkey, Germany. I mean.
Oh, okay, Germany. Yeah. Let's go with tank developments. We've got armored warfare level 1 already, so tank developments there, so that should help things out considerably there. And for Austria-Hungary, artillery level 1, infantry warfare. Mobility could be useful, I guess. And logistics, that would be helpful. And let's see, command and control. Yeah, we'll do a command and control. Okay, that will be research we're going to let's look at, I think up here we had maybe a few units. Here, this one. Oh, they can't improve anymore, so we'll move them forward there. Okay. Okay, I think that looks good. Let's end the episode here. I want to thank everyone for watching. Thanks for liking the videos. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Post your comments below, corrections to anything that we've been talking about, because I'm sure we've made some mistake. So say goodbye, Ari.
Bye.
And so we'll see you again for another historical gaming video. Thanks so much, everyone.